World of Warcraft is the biggest MMO of all time, yet I never played it. It's a world that so many people describe as their true gaming home, especially back in the day. It created countless iconic internet moments, from the legendary Leroy Jenkins meme.
Oh, it's a lot better than we usually do.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
To my very first contact with World of Warcraft when I was like 8 or 9 years old, the famous South Park episode.
This shall be a day for all to remember. Let us bravely charge the fields of Azeroth, from which... Hey, fellas!
An episode so iconic that someone actually cosplayed the infamous No-Lifer guy at BlizzCon. So eventually, I wanted to give it a shot myself, but I immediately stumbled into a huge problem. Which version am I even supposed to play? Once you boot up the launcher, you're greeted by a wall of different WoW versions. And I realized I had to do some serious homework. I watched guides, tier lists, and video essays, but as a total outsider, I couldn't understand anything. What on earth is SOD Classic? Should I play Hardcore Classic, where death is permanent? Will I get the best experience in Mist of Pandaria Classic, or will it be too modern? I wasted several hours on research until I finally decided to hit up a friend of mine who just said, just play TBC Classic. He told me that TBC was one of the greatest and biggest expansions in WoW history, standing right alongside Vanilla and Wrath of the Lich King. And just like that, my journey in TBC Classic began. A quick side note. This is technically not my first time playing World of Warcraft or MMORPGs in general. When World of Warcraft was in its prime, I was simply too young to pay a subscription fee. Back then, you belonged to one of two categories. Either your parents were willing to pay for you, or they simply wouldn't. And I was definitely part of the second group. The only way I could play WoW at the time was through private service. An old friend of mine recommended a Wrath of the Lich King private server where I leveled a hunter all the way to level 40 without having any clue what I was actually doing. Pet training? Nuh-uh. Didn't know anything about that. Professions? What the fuck are those anyway? I just wanted to shoot things with my bow. Looking back, reaching level 40 without knowing the basics was quite an achievement, but I ended up quitting because something felt completely off. My pet wasn't tanking any mobs for me. But that was entirely on me. I had never trained my pet to generate threat, so it felt less like a fierce combat ally and more like a lazy dog sleeping on my couch while I did all the heavy lifting. I was tanking everything myself, getting crushed, and eventually gave up. Fast forward a few years, I decided to give Retail WoW a shot when the WoW Within was released, but once again, I didn't really understand what I was doing. I leveled all the way to max level and just quit immediately after. Retail wasn't what I expected. There was no real immersion, the community felt toxic and unwelcoming to new players, the exact opposite of what I was used to from Final Fantasy XIV. I didn't need to explore the world or interact with anyone, I just spammed the automatic dungeon finder over and over until I hit max level. It felt hollow. This was not what I was looking for. Back to consuming videos about World of Warcraft, I stumbled upon G-Base's video on how he discovered Classic WoW for the first time right after beating Warcraft 3. Watching his journey really hyped me up because it seemed to offer everything I was missing. Genuine player interactions, a world where you actually have to take your time, and a real sense of adventure. But I think I've yapped enough. What was TBC Classic actually like as a new player? My journey started as a troll hunter. I gave him a name, explored the starting zone, visited my first capital city, Orgrimmar, and played a couple of dungeons up until level 28. I mean, of course I headed my way to the Barrens as well, but more on that later. And then I dropped my hunter. But Chris, I thought the classic experience was exactly what you were looking for. Yeah, it really was what I was looking for. I had interesting experiences and interactions with other players, and they were genuinely kind to me since they started explaining professions and how a hunter works. Everything seemed fine. But I ruined my own experience with an add-on called Rested XP. I'm not against using add-ons, but Rested XP really just took a lot away from me, and now I don't want to continue my hunter journey with this hunter, but more to that later as well. See, Rested XP just tells you things like, you should kill these mobs and then proceed to this exact quest, go to that specific zone. It used an arrow icon to tell me where to go and just took all the decisions I usually have to make on my own, which was not the experience I was looking for. Just so you can understand what I mean. I had more than enough footage of my hunter leveling, but I can't really show anything useful because Rested XP made everything so dull and repetitive. WoW Classic is repetitive enough with all of its quests, you know, kill 10 of enemy X, kill X to get his loot, or just gather items in general and hand in the quest. But Reset XP took every single sensational feeling away because all I was paying attention to was the arrow pointing me to my next location and occasionally the description to the left. I couldn't explore the world, I didn't even really mention the world or didn't even realize which zone I was in or how the zone even looked. So after quitting my hunter, I then started my real character. An Orc Warrior. Where I still used add-ons that would simplify some aspects of the game, but mostly just quality of life things. I watched videos about professions, picked blacksmithing and mining, and began just running around the starting zone, and dropped like the last 10 hours only in the Barrens, where I still am, by the way, because there's just so much stuff to do. Every stack of quests I completed meant that 10 more quests would randomly appear in the Barrens. The combat was not what I expected. Pulling even one random enemy could mean death, where I would just stare at my grayscreen and walk back to my corpse just to die at the same exact location multiple times again. It really was a hard task to complete quests that were even the same level as I was. Besides mining and smelting ores in the open world, I figured that I should first level up before jumping back into the world. So I decided that it was time to play some dungeons. And since I played a warrior, I queued up as a tank, since tanks and healers are the most needed roles in dungeons, at least that's what I'm feeling in Ragefire Chasm and Wailing Caverns. And this was hard for a reason I didn't think I would find difficult at all, because tanking is nothing easy. I tanked a lot in Final Fantasy XIV, where again you are being handheld in comparison. See, mobs attack the player with the largest amount of threat. So my goal was to manage threat levels of all the mobs you pull, or your party members would occasionally pull. Significantly harder in Classic WoW than in Final Fantasy XIV. In Final Fantasy XIV, you just have to press a button to go into a so-called tank stance. Attacking a mob will generate such a huge amount of threat that it's practically impossible for any healer or DPS to contest your threat level, which was not the case in Classic WoW. While you can pull the entire floor in Final Fantasy XIV and just spam AoE attacks to clear them, in Classic WoW I could pull 3 or 4 mobs and already start struggling with threat management or even surviving those 3 or 4 mobs. Suddenly the exact same mobs that I thought were easily manageable would kill my healer and 2 of my DPS. Another thing I was forced to realize was I have to look at my healer's mana. I was pulling mobs without my healer way too many times because he had to sit down to drink to gain some mana so he could heal our party again. But I just didn't pay enough attention and was more often than not the only reason that we wiped like 4 times in Wailing Caverns on a single day. I was hit with tanxiety at its finest, but my healer and the other party members just calmly explained what I had to do and what things I needed to pay more attention to. After all those chaotic dungeon wipes and getting crushed in open world combat, one thing became crystal clear: I urgently need better gear. I had already been advised to catch up on gear, but I really didn't feel like endless dungeon grinding just for drops, especially since that meant spending even more time in low level zones just to get my professions up to date. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and dive into the auction house economy. I started my first little grind, greeding on green gear just to sell it on the auction house, and to my surprise, it worked. I really felt like I had discovered a way to make early money and genuinely felt rich. Overconfident, I stepped to the auctioneer and bought gear so I could survive a bit longer or dish out 10 more damage. And the sickest thing of all? Shoulder plates. I don't know why, but getting your first shoulder gear just did something to my overall appearance where I thought I was dripped out in every aspect. Those shoulder pieces really weren't anything special, didn't look like crazy gear or have enormous stats. It was just this little addition that I could start to appreciate every time I booted up the game and looked at the character select screen. Suddenly I realized every damn modern MMO just throws good looking gear at you without any meaning, just to reward the player as early as possible. In games like Final Fantasy XIV, if everyone looks good, everyone kind of looks the same, which was not the case in Classic WoW. Play Classic WoW for 15 hours and then walk into Orgrimmar or Stormwind or any capital city and look at level 70 players with raid gear. Or I don't even know if it's raid gear, but anyways, they look awesome in comparison. Because you can only imagine what it takes to get these pieces. Sometimes I catch myself standing on top of the tower in Orgrimmar, right beside the Flight Master, feeling genuine respect towards some maxed out hunters, mages or whatever. And this concept does not only apply to your glamour, it applies to random world drops as well. Get out into the world, kill some mobs or run a dungeon, and soon you will realize that every single piece that drops can upgrade your stats, even if it's just by a little bit. Now that I think about it, I don't really think any other MMO gives vendors as much value as Classic WoW does? Because it's completely natural that you'll check out some of the vendors you find along the way to buy a weapon. Really? A weapon from a vendor? Obviously, the pieces there really pack a punch and will help you progress and improve your character, which is not the case in any other MMO that I have played yet. Now, freshly geared up and equipped with my shiny new shoulder plates, I was ready to finally break out of my usual routine. You see, WoW Classic is a bit of a loop itself. On one hand, you walk around doing your leveling activities, on the other there's the city game, flying to Orgrimmar to visit the auction house, sell dungeon gear, vendor your trash, or buy upgrades from class and profession trainers. Since I didn't have huge blocks of time to play, I had fallen into a loop. Log in, run a quick dungeon, fly to Orgrimmar, sell trash, log off. Technically, I was still trapped in the Barrens. That was until I finally sent off and discovered my first truly new zone, Sunrock Retreat. Immediately, I noticed new quests, including one for a dungeon called Black Fathom Deeps. But as I accepted it, I got a subtle hint of what was to come. Up until this point, every zone I had stepped into was purely Horde territory. But suddenly, I saw a human rogue running past. Nothing special at first, until I realized the Sunrock Retreat city guards were actively chasing him down. He clearly wasn't supposed to be here. While heading out to find the entrance to BFD, smashing Wyvern eggs along the way, I finally got an invite to a BFD group, quickly followed by another request to tank it. I picked a second group because a player named Leifina just felt nicer and more welcoming. But right as we were getting ready to start, life hit. My roommate walked in needing urgent help and I had to log off. It was so disappointing, because the group was genuinely understanding when I confessed I was a total noob, reassuring me that tanking BFD wouldn't be too overwhelming, and when I logged back in, I then realized I was already summoned to Ashenvale, and honestly, it might be my favorite region so far. Moving from the endless red dirt of the Barrens into a lush, colorful forest felt incredible. But Ashenvale also taught me a hard lesson. As soon as you enter, the game displays a warning: contested territory. This meant Alliance players were everywhere. I saw an Alliance NPC and naively thought I should attack him before he treated me like my city guards treated that rogue. Out of nowhere, an Alliance druid jumped out of stealth to defend his NPC brother. Already half dead from surrounding mobs, I fought for my life, but died quickly. On my way back to my corpse, I spotted an Alliance mage lurking behind a rock nearby, blatantly waiting to camp my spawn. I stood there as a ghost, observing the situation, before finally taking a gamble, reviving and spamming heals on myself. After running to the Zormstrand, I picked up all the local quests, only to fail a level 23 quest immediately because it spawned 2 heavy waves of mobs and a huge boss that my solo warrior clearly wasn't built for. To wrap up that day's grind, I made my way back to the Barrens, promising myself it will hopefully be one of my last times here. But the flight back through the vibrant, canopy-covered forests of Ashenvale was so breathtaking that it left me with one thought: damn. I think I need to experience this game as a night elf at least once. I wanted to tell the story with Ashenvale and the Barrens and my hunter up until now, just to give you a small little insight of how a new player might feel in this world. But besides my warrior and my cancelled hunter, I dipped into other classes as well. I created a mage, a priest and a shaman, where I just killed a few mobs or did some questing if I didn't feel like playing a warrior right now, or just simply didn't have a large amount of time to spend in WoW. Across all of my characters, I have gathered around like 100 hours up until now, and the thing I like the most is it genuinely feels like a real MMORPG again. A community that cares, people that are kind and nice to each other. I mean, you will find someone right in front of a cave entrance and you start talking about which quest they look forward to taking on, inviting the player and just taking on the cave for the next 20 minutes as a duo, wiping together, laughing together and disbanding again, just to see them 2 weeks later and still recognizing their name. Do you know how amazing that is? It's just a really amazing feeling that you can actually recognize someone in an MMO nowadays. As a conclusion, Classic WoW seems like a game that teaches you to take your time again. Something that has been lost, sadly, since our world turned so incredibly fast-paced. If you feel like no modern MMORPG is worthy of being called your MMO home, try Classic WoW. Maybe this video will finally push someone to give it a shot, or maybe it will reignite the flame of returning Classic WoW veterans who want to watch someone exploring the world of Azeroth with baby eyes. Because the only thing that's bothering me right now is that I want to play a hunter again. I played a hunter way back on the Wrath of the Lich King private server, and technically my first character on this server was a hunter as well. I plan to create a new hunter fresh from level 1 and stream the journey to anyone who's interested in seeing a newbie take on the last bit of TBC Classic. I'd love for people to drop some advice so a player like me can learn as much as possible, hopefully reach max level and maybe even raid a little bit before Wrath of the Lich King Classic drops eventually.